The cold December rain was falling steadily on the streets of Lisbon as Cristiano Ronaldo made his way through the Rossio district after attending a private dinner with Portuguese national team officials to discuss upcoming international matches and the development of youth football programs that would benefit the next generation of Portuguese players who aspired to represent their country at the highest levels of international competition. It was late in the evening, and most of the restaurants, shops, and businesses in the historic area had already closed for the night, leaving the cobblestone streets relatively empty, except for a few late-night pedestrians hurrying through the rain toward their destinations, and the occasional taxi or delivery vehicle navigating the narrow streets that had been designed centuries before the advent of modern transportation systems. As Ronaldo walked toward his car, which was parked several blocks away from the restaurant where he had been dining, he noticed a figure huddled in a doorway of a closed bookstore, seeking shelter from the rain under the small overhang that provided minimal protection from the weather, but represented the best available refuge for someone who had nowhere else to go during the harsh winter night. The person appeared to be an elderly man wearing multiple layers of worn clothing and holding a piece of cardboard over his head in a futile attempt to stay dry. And something about his posture and demeanor suggested not just homelessness, but a kind of dignity and resignation that spoke of someone who had once occupied a very different position in society, before circumstances had reduced him to seeking shelter in doorways and surviving on the charity of strangers who might or might not choose to acknowledge his existence or offer assistance. As Ronaldo approached the doorway where the man was sheltering, intending to offer some money and perhaps help him find warmer, drier accommodation for the night, he was shocked to recognize the face of Professor Antonio Cardoso, the mathematics teacher who had taught Ronaldo during his brief time at the Sporting Lisbon Academy when he was 12 years old, and who had been one of the few educators who had encouraged Ronaldo's academic development while supporting his football ambitions during a time when most teachers viewed athletic pursuits as distractions from serious education rather than legitimate career paths that deserved respect and institutional support. Professor Cardoso had been instrumental in helping young Ronaldo balance his academic responsibilities with his intensive football training schedule, providing additional tutoring sessions, flexible assignment deadlines, and encouragement during periods when Ronaldo struggled to maintain acceptable grades, while dedicating most of his time and energy to developing the football skills that would eventually transform him into one of the world's greatest athletes. The teacher had recognized Ronaldo's intelligence and potential, even when other educators dismissed him as just another football-obsessed boy who would never amount to anything academically, and his support and belief in Ronaldo's ability to succeed both athletically and intellectually had provided crucial encouragement during some of the most challenging and uncertain periods of Ronaldo's youth, when his future seemed far from guaranteed, and his dreams of professional football success seemed impossibly ambitious for a boy from a working-class family in Madeira. "Professor Cardoso?" Ronaldo said quietly, not wanting to startle the elderly man, but needing to confirm that this was indeed the teacher who had played such an important role in his early development. "Is that really you?" The elderly man looked up with eyes that initially showed confusion and then recognition, as he realized that the well-dressed stranger addressing him was the same ambitious young boy he had taught and encouraged over 20 years earlier, though the transformation from promising student-athlete to international celebrity was so dramatic that it took several moments for the connection to fully register in his mind. "Cristiano?" Professor Cardoso replied with obvious surprise and embarrassment about being discovered in such circumstances by someone whose success and achievements had exceeded everyone's most optimistic expectations for the determined but uncertain boy who had once struggled to complete mathematics assignments while pursuing his football dreams with single-minded determination that impressed even skeptical educators. "I can't believe it's really you. What are you doing in this neighborhood at this time of night?" Ronaldo was deeply disturbed to find his former teacher living on the streets and immediately sat down beside him in the doorway, ignoring the rain and the discomfort of the cold stone steps, in order to understand how someone who had been a respected educator and positive influence in so many young people's lives had ended up homeless and apparently forgotten by the educational system and society that had once valued his contributions to student development and academic achievement. "Professor, what happened? How did you end up here? I remember you as one of the most dedicated teachers at the academy, and you helped me so much during those difficult early years when I was trying to balance school and football." Professor Cardoso's story emerged gradually as they sat together in the doorway, protected from the worst of the rain, but still exposed to the cold and discomfort that characterized his daily existence, as someone who had lost not only his career and income, but also his home, his savings, and his sense of purpose and identity that had been so closely tied to his role as an educator and mentor to young people. He explained that he had continued teaching for 15 years after Ronaldo left the academy, maintaining his commitment to helping student athletes balance their academic and athletic goals while developing the critical thinking skills and intellectual confidence that would serve them well regardless of whether their sports careers were successful or disappointing. However, budget cuts and educational reforms had gradually eliminated many of the support programs that Professor Cardoso had developed for student athletes, and his teaching position had been eliminated when the academy restructured its academic program to focus more heavily on football training and less on comprehensive education that prepared young people for diverse career paths and life challenges beyond sports. The loss of his teaching position had been devastating both financially and emotionally, as Professor Cardoso had devoted his entire adult life to education and had no other marketable skills or career options that would allow him to maintain his income and lifestyle after being forced into early retirement without adequate pension benefits or financial security. His modest savings had been quickly depleted by medical expenses related to his wife's cancer treatment. And after she died, he had been unable to maintain their apartment and had gradually descended into homelessness as his resources disappeared and his mental health deteriorated in response to the combined stresses of grief, financial hardship, and social isolation that characterized his new reality as someone who had been forgotten by the institutions and communities that had once valued his contributions. Professor Cardoso had been living on the streets for over 2 years, surviving on charity from passers-by, occasional meals from homeless shelters, and the small amount of money he could earn by helping illiterate individuals complete government forms and applications that required basic writing and mathematical skills that he retained despite his drastically changed circumstances. His dignity in education made him reluctant to beg aggressively or compete with other homeless individuals for the most lucrative panhandling locations, and his age and physical condition made it difficult for him to access many of the temporary employment opportunities that might have provided income and hope for improving his situation. "Professor, this is unacceptable," Ronaldo said with obvious emotion and determination. "You believed in me when other teachers thought I was wasting my time with football, and you helped me develop the confidence and skills that contributed to everything I've accomplished since then. I'm not going to let you spend another night on the streets." Without hesitation, Ronaldo used his phone to contact his personal assistant and arrange for immediate hotel accommodation for Professor Cardoso, along with clothing, medical care, and everything else necessary to restore his dignity and comfort, while longer-term solutions could be developed and implemented. However, Ronaldo's assistance went far beyond emergency relief, as he was determined to address the systemic problems that had led to Professor Cardoso's homelessness, while creating opportunities for him to return to meaningful work that would utilize his skills and experience in ways that provided both financial security and personal satisfaction. Over the following weeks, Ronaldo arranged for Professor Cardoso to receive comprehensive medical and dental care, professional counseling to address the trauma and depression associated with his losses and homelessness, and appropriate housing in a comfortable apartment that would allow him to rebuild his life with dignity and privacy while maintaining connections to support services and community resources that would help prevent future crises. More importantly, Ronaldo established a private tutoring and educational consulting business for Professor Cardoso, providing funding and administrative support that allowed the experienced educator to return to work helping student athletes and other young people who needed academic support while pursuing demanding extracurricular activities that required careful time management and specialized educational accommodations. The tutoring business quickly became successful as Professor Cardoso's reputation for understanding the unique challenges faced by student athletes attracted clients from throughout the Lisbon area, and his ability to help young people develop both academic skills and life management strategies made his services highly valued by families who wanted their children to succeed in multiple areas rather than focusing exclusively on sports or academics at the expense of comprehensive personal development. Ronaldo also established a scholarship fund administered by Professor Cardoso that provided educational support for student athletes from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, ensuring that talented young people would have access to the same kind of encouragement and practical assistance that Professor Cardoso had provided to Ronaldo during his own formative years at the academy. The scholarship program allowed Professor Cardoso to continue his life's work of helping young people balance their diverse interests and talents while developing the confidence and skills necessary for success in whatever careers they ultimately chose to pursue, whether in sports, academics, or other fields that required dedication, intelligence, and perseverance. Professor Cardoso's transformation from homeless desperation to renewed purpose and financial security became an inspiration to other educators and social workers who dealt with the challenges of supporting people who had fallen through social safety nets, despite their valuable skills and previous contributions to their communities. His story demonstrated how individual acts of kindness and systemic support could combine to restore dignity and opportunity to people who had been marginalized by economic changes and institutional failures that left them without adequate resources or recognition for their past service and ongoing potential. Years later, Professor Cardoso would often reflect on how a chance encounter with his former student had not only saved his life, but it also provided him with opportunities to continue making positive contributions to young people's development, and to demonstrate that setbacks and failures, no matter how devastating, could be overcome with appropriate support and renewed sense of purpose. For Ronaldo, the discovery of his former teacher's homelessness and his subsequent recovery became one of the most meaningful experiences of his adult life, reinforcing his understanding that success and fame carried obligations to help others, and that the most important victories were often personal rather than professional, measured by the positive impact that privileged individuals could have on the lives of people who had helped them achieve their dreams and who deserved recognition and support when they faced their own challenges and crises.